ST-12, clear takeoff, left hand. Takeoff left, finish one. Left land, swim west, copy. Crossing 2-4. Crossing 2-4 is
Hello and welcome to the Blueskies podcast. I'm PR Ganapathy, your host.
Just 70, roger, report type southeast, Greenwich, 4, midway, and view selected.
Today it's my great pleasure to welcome to the program Air Mshl Anil Khosla, who retired recently as the Vice Chief of Air Staff. Air Mshl Khosla was commissioned into the fighter stream of the Indian Air Force in the year 1979 and retired in 2019, almost 40 years later, with over 4,000 hours of flying. He flew MiGs, Jaguars, held a number of operational and strategic assignments through his career in the Air Force, and is currently an extremely well regarded and in demand speaker on strategic national security issues. So, we're going to have a fascinating conversation with him today on his experiences as a young officer flying various aircraft around the country, but also about some of the developments in military aviation, in the national security environment, in the subcontinent, his experiences around some operational incidents that the Indian Air Force participated in the last few years. But first things first, welcome to the program, sir. Thank you so much for speaking to the audience of the Blueskies.
Thank you, Gana, for giving me this opportunity. Well, I'm a bit scared in the sense in the end, which you covered the canvas. I mean, so large, maybe we'll have to talk for 4 to 5 hours.
And I'm sure our audience will enjoy that, sir. But first things first, sir, we always love to get to know our guests. So just love to know where you grew up, what was your motivation to join the service, and what was some of that initial experience like? What are some anecdotes from your training, perhaps, while you were coming up in service?
So, actually, my father was in the Air Force, and so I grew up in the Air Force environment right from the beginning. And our school was also, our compound was touching almost the airfield. And I remember during our classes, the fighters used to be taking off, and with the noise, the classroom used to get disrupted. And during the break, we used to climb up on the boundary wall and try to look for the aircraft who were taking off and landing.
Wow. Which base
It was
was
in
this and
Kanpur,
what
and it
aircraft
had
were
a
they?
BRD and a storage. So MiG-21, Hunters, all these aircraft used to be flying there. And so that was our environment. I think that left a big imprint on my mind. And then my brother joined army and I joined NDA. A very interesting thing happened actually. Uh, I gave the NDA exam and I passed, and my father said, "No, no, that was for experience sake. Now don't go to NDA." And
Right.
for that, he made me take biology. He said, "Your elder brother is becoming engineer. You become a doctor." Very simple, folks. Anyway, I joined NDA and I went there. And then my father's logic was that he joined Navy. He said, "Why?" By then, my brother had joined Army. So, dad was in the Air Force, Army, brother in the Army, and he said, "You join Navy, so we'll have all tri service at home." So, I was adamant on joining Air Force and flying. So, that was the initial schooling days. And I was physically very weak. Actually, I was just about 46 kgs, maybe lesser, uh, and physically quite weak. And my mother used to say, "You will not be able to go through NDA for 3 years. You will come back within a month or so." So, so I proved them wrong and continued, and God's grace wherever I reached. And training period was, interesting in the sense I had a very early encounter with the dangers of the aviation as a cadet when I was flying ST2 aircraft that I always lovingly called it Dalda 10 aircraft.
Dalda tin.
Yeah.
Right.
So I was doing my second solo and I had an engine failure. The engines had started giving problem that time,
Oh my
and
goodness.
I had to force land, and so I had a very encounter in the beginning itself, and I got a cadet. I got a CNC commendation for that force landing. So that was the training, this thing. Then initial years in the Air Force, I mean, my entire career in the Air Force, 40 years, which is very exceptional and good. And I really enjoyed myself. And I generally divide into three phases, the whole 40 years. One is, you can call it the worker phase when you're doing everything yourself. The second one is you can call it supervisor phase when you're getting things done from others. And third phase, I would call it, influence phase, where you have influence on the organization future, and you're the decision maker. You're in the decision making circles. So the first phase, which I was very lucky once again. My first base was Ambala, which your father also commanded. That is the oldest base in the Indian Air Force, and now at the moment, it has got Rafale aircraft inducted in Ambala.
Yeah.
And my first operational squadron was 24th squadron called
The
Hawks
Hawks.
21, and they are, as another 14th of this month, they are having the Golden Jubilee celebrations. So
Okay, right.
we'll be
And
joining
what
them.
did they
And
fly? They flew the Type 96 at that time?
yeah, that time it was Type 96, and it was one of the very good squadrons with lot of op orientation. And we used to get a lot of flying. Our CO, late CD Chandrasekhar, he later died in a MiG 29 accident in Pune. And he was very, very, operational man, and his focus was that youngsters should fly as much as possible. And we were, me and my coursemate, we were the first ones to get fully operational status because of 21st Con. So that foundation which was formed was quite solid, and that was nice. And thereafter, I flew Jaguars, and thereafter I carried on in Jaguars for quite some time, and mainly in six con with maritime role over the sea.
Right, right, right. And this was the Daring Jaguar with the Agave radar and things like that, isn't
Darin
it?
Jaguar was initially in Ambala, and then so sorry, that was Navas Jaguar aircraft, and then six con had Agave, you're right, Agave and Darin, and a lot of sea flying, and I did 3 10 years in six con actually.
Wow, okay.
As a squadron
So,
pilot, as a flight commander, and as a CO. It's like army, you have a parent unit and you keep going back
right,
to it.
right. You keep coming back. Right. And so these were missions out with the Navy and, low over the sea.
Yeah, it was really very, very thrilling experience, flying over the sea, and very scary also, at night, dark nights and all. It's quite scary. It's not so, and aircraft doesn't have autopilot, it's quite scary. You have to be on the guard all the time.
Right, right, right. So, you then went on to also command 7 Wing, which is Ambala, which had Jaguars under it. But before that, you also were, you commanded Jaisalmer, which is out right there in the desert. What are some of those experiences like?
So what happened was, after finishing with Ambala for 4 years, after flying MiG-21s and Jaguars, with 6 years of service, I went for instructional tenure. So flying instructor school in Tamram, and thereafter I did a 2 year tenure in Air Force Academy, teaching ab initio cadets how to fly,
On the Kirans,
and
what were you?
on Kiran aircraft, and then came back to flying instructor school as an instructor in with 8 years or so, 8.5 years of service. And actually, you can gauge how much flying we did when I did my flying instructor's course. That time I finished my first 1,000 hours. And 3 years later, when I came back as an instructor, I completed my second 1,000 hours. So that kind of flying we did in the initial years,
I get
and
it. Okay.
thereafter went on to do staff course and other courses. And you're right, I was lucky in the sense I commanded two very good bases at the medium level, at the supervisor level. That is Jaisalmer, which is a very, very interesting base. All squadrons come there, do range work, do operational flying, and a very, very interesting base. And of course, Ambala, and that was a very thrilling experience. I'll tell you an incident. Your father took over Ambala later. When I joined, Air Marshal Bawa was AOC, and we had called on the whole squad to. Sorry, I'm going back in time now when we were pilot
Sure, sure.
officers.
Yes,
So
yes, of course.
21st Con, when I was commanding, we had called on the AOC, and you as a pilot officer, you are really scared, and you're new to the base, new to the squad.
Right.
I remember going to the AOC's house and standing in one corner, and then 2000. And 9, we went back to Bala as a AOC in the same house.
The eagle's
And
nest.
so when I went to Eagle's Nest, the first thing I did was I went to that drawing room and I stood in the same corner.
Same corner.
Yeah. My wife and children were asking, "What are you doing?" I said, 1981, I came here and I was standing here in this corner. So I'm reliving those days.
Yeah, for the Air Force people who don't know, that was, I think, the Maharaja of Patiala's summer palace or something like that. It was a really very impressive house. Yeah. Now, so you held two interesting posts after that, AOC J&K, and that's one of the few kind of geographically organized command. And so, did you have all the bases in Jammu and Kashmir, say Leh and Thois and Avantipur under your command? Why was that structure kind of chosen? And
So then I was very lucky, as you've seen in my first two phases, and the third phase also, that is higher level phase, which I call decision making or influence phase, was also very interesting. After Ambala, I went as AOC Mao to Bombay for 2.5 years, and that was with Navy. As it is, I was flying with Navy for almost 12, 13 years.
correct, correct. And so, sir, for the audience who don't know what MAO is, if you can just explain, it's MAO. Yeah,
It is called MAO, Maritime Air Operation. That is the headquarter, and it's an interface between the Air Force and the Navy.
got it.
And at two-star ABM level, it was another good posting. I got to work with Navy very closely at high level. Thereafter, I went as AOC JNK, as you brought out, in Udhampur, and that was with Army. You work extensively, and all bases north of Pathankot come under AOC JNK. That is like a mini command headquarter. You have flying bases, your Srinagar, Avantipur, Jammu, Udhampur, Leh, and Thois. And so these six bases are there, and then you have other units under. So total about 9 odd units under you. So that is also a very good experience. And all these appointments thereafter, as SASO of Central Air Command, Director General Air Operations, CNC in Eastern Air Command, and VCS, you're dealing with a lot of things, both northern adversary as well as the east, the China and Pakistan both. Then you're working with a lot of ministries. So it was very lucky for me to have all attended these appointments.
Okay, got it. Great. So, there were two things that you had mentioned in your blog when I was reading it, which is that you were, firsthand involved in Doklam as well as in Balakot. And so, if we can spend some time just speaking about the background of what happened and then your firsthand experiences of what that situation was like.
Yeah. So actually, Doklam was in Eastern Air Command when I took over in January 2017. And in the same year, that Doklam, actually, we keep calling it Doklam, but a lot of people, especially Army who are on the ground, they corrected this as Dolam. It's called Dolam. So that happened, and so we had to coordinate the whole episode, and we were gone. And we went into full alert status, and we were fully alert. And over the next few months, we observed what is going on. Of course, we moved the troops, army troops, very quickly, and it was like a face-to-face situation. And Air Force also, we did a lot for the Dolam thing. We reviewed and refined all aspects of our capability in the eastern sector. In terms of our resources, whether they're adequate or not. In case not, we asked Air Headquarters and we flew in a lot of resources. Our plans, response plans we reviewed and refined. We made a lot of joint plans with the army. All the capability status we took a rain check and enhanced in every way. And the best part was, it was totally integrated with the army. Whatever we were doing, we were exchanging with each other notes, and we were doing together. And thereafter, we carried on till the time situation was hot, and we matched every action, and we were fully prepared for any eventuality whatsoever. And even after the situation was resolved, we kept monitoring, and they also kept monitoring for quite some time. That what is the other side doing?
Sorry, can I just ask you a question on the the face off with the Chinese? And so from that experience, what are some lessons that you would like to convey to, particularly the uninformed civilian public like myself, on, what we should be doing in terms of our stance and particularly dealing with our neighbor to the east?
That Ghana is a full topic in itself. I think we can for 1 hour, and that is what a lot of think tanks this discussion goes on. How to deal with the thing. So I'll just briefly tell you. See, we are facing few challenges. We have two nuclear powered, not so friendly, I would say, hostile neighbors, and both are nuclear powered. And their worst part is that both are in collision with each other. The interoperability between them is very, very high. So that becomes a challenge, dealing with two of them together. And what we need to do is, I mean, and if you see in the broader sense, what is happening is China in the race towards race with the US is capability wise marching way ahead. In terms of military capability, in terms of economic, obviously they've gone ahead in the technology, in terms of modernization. And what is happening is that attitude has become very, very aggressive. If you see now that Galwan happened, and ours is the only country they have not resolved the border issues. And very frequently, they first Chumar happened, then Dolam happened, then Galwan happened. So at a regular intervals, these face-offs and these sort of incidents are taking place, and so we have to deal with them. Now, to deal with them, we need to have our capability enhancement. Number one, I mean, we have to spend money on our defense forces. We need to modernize them. We need to equip them so that we can deal with these challenges and threats. That is number one. Secondly, we need to invest in technology. Because technology, makes a lot of difference, especially in the air warfare. Air Force is a very, very technology intensive service. They say the man can walk on ground without technology. He can even swim in water without technology, but he cannot fly without technology. So technology is a very, very important. So we need to spend money. Third thing we need to do is to deal with the threats. Now the warfare is changing. It's not no longer only military. It's a whole of government approach. You heard terms like gray zone warfare, hybrid warfare. So hybrid warfare is like kinetic and non-kinetic. Non-kinetic means in the cyber domain, in the space domain, electromagnetic domain, even in the economic domain. So all these are non-kinetic, and gray zone is when there is no peace, no war. I mean, it's a sort of a gray zone, and all these activities of cyber activities, space, information warfare, all these continue even when there is no war. So whatever organization we do, reorganization of our forces should be catered for the future challenges. So these are the few things, but the bottom line remains that we need to spend money on our military capability enhancement, but that's the biggest deterrence.
Individuals show before you eventuate. Just need 7B, like your report type southeast, connect before eventuate, and you'll select it.
Right, sir. So we were talking about Balakot. I think you were vice chief during that time.
Yeah, so Balakot, I consider it as a farewell gift from the Air Force. Yeah, 14th February that incident happened. The trigger incident of Pulwama, and I was in Jaisalmer that time. I was gone to review the preparation for the firepower demo which was coming up. And evening, I heard the news and I rushed back on next day. And a quick decision was taken that okay, we'll respond militarily, and very quick decision once again that air power will be used this time. I think first time air power was being used. So I was involved with the full planning of the operation as a vice chief because the operations come under the vice chief. And so a couple of things related to Balakot is that the target chosen was, a terrorist camp of Jaish-e-Mohammed, and it was inside Pak, and we had full legitimacy, that, and the target chosen was also that it increased our legitimacy that we targeted only the camp which was isolated and not in a built-up area, in an isolated area over a hilltop and nothing around it. So there's no question of collateral damage or anything. And it was a very, very well planned operation. It went like a copybook. And even the tactical surprise was achieved. In this case, everyone knew that something is going to happen, but still we achieved a surprise. The enemy was surprised because of two major factors. One is, need to know basis. Everyone didn't know that is going on, and very few people know. In a headquarters, just about 4 to 5 people knew. And everything went on as usual. Fire power demonstration, that exercise in Jaisalmer went on. Aero India took place in Bangalore, and we participated in everything. Even the war memorial in Delhi was inaugurated, and fly past was conducted. So every activity, looked as if it's a normal activity which is going on. And in Balakot, the message was very clear that it is not against the people of Pakistan. It is against the terrorism. It is against the terror organizations. It is against the perpetuators of terrorism. It is against the people who support them, the Pak Army and ISI. So the message was very, very clear. And I think message went home quite clearly that we will not tolerate now. Our patience has gone off. And if such a thing happens, we are going to increase the cost for you. And we, if required, we will come inside and take necessary
Got it,
action.
got it.
So that is what the message is.
Some of the questions, and I don't know if you can answer this, so feel free to tell me. So, the choice of the Mirage as a platform to strike, and those specific spice bombs. Were you involved? Are those decisions taken at your level? Are those taken much lower down? And what are some of the thinking behind it, if you can share?
Yeah. So basically, how it works in the Air Force is centralized planning and decentralized execution. So what happens is you have a service headquarter, that is air headquarter, and then you have commands, and then you have stations, and then you have squadrons. So, Air headquarter job is to liaise with the higher authorities for the decision making at national level, whatever activities are there. Then liaise with other agencies like int agencies, civil aviation, a whole lot of other ministries to tie up various things. And third, most important is provide the wherewithal to the commands to execute your plans and convey the decisions which have been there to the command. And commands, they do the execution, and they plan all the tactical aspects of the this thing. And of course, air headquarter is in the loop in consultation, but mainly planning is done by the command. And whatever is the best suitable platform and weapon combination that is chosen. And it's not only the aircraft which are dropping the weapon, it's a whole package. It's not only, yeah, it's a fighter aircraft, then there's a decoys, then there is the AD aircraft, then there's a VAX, there's the FK2 refuelers. It's a full package of 50, 60, or 70 or whatever number of aircraft, and the detailed planning is carried out. It's a very scientific process of target to weapon matching, and how many weapons should be dropped, or what weapons should be dropped. It's a very, very scientific method, and their conduct courses are conducted. People are trained on it. It's a very, very scientific method. So that goes on. That's how it works.
And were you monitoring this from the Air Headquarters ops room when it was happening real time?
Of course, it is monitored at command headquarter level, air headquarter level, and not networking has come up fully. Air Force is a network service, and your picture is available wherever you are. You're so networked that you may be aircraft may be flying in Srinagar, and you may be sitting in Bangalore and seeing the whole picture and controlling that aircraft. that sort of capability has come up as far as networking is
So,
concerned.
what was going on in your mind when the actual operation was launched, and what did you feel when you got the message back that they had successfully hit the target and returned without, without any issues? What was going through your mind? What were your feelings at that time?
Yeah, so when as I told you, very few people knew what is going on, and we were monitoring. And so that time, first, it was actually, what should I say, cocktail of emotions on those. Not only that day, it was for the next maybe plus minus 15 days or 2 weeks, plus minus, it was a real cocktail of emotions. I mean, emotions are changing so fast one after the other because of the situation which was changing very often. So when the missions were launched, obviously anxiety is there that hope everything goes well and properly, and there are no major hitches and all. So it went on, and there were no losses. I mean, they were totally surprised. The closest, there were no aircraft of the enemy anywhere close to our aircraft. So it went on quite well. And next day, actually, there was no time to think thereafter. That was a beginning
Right,
for us.
correct.
Why beginning for us is now you have hit somebody, now you have to put all your guards up. So initially we didn't put all our guards up, saying because that will indicate that we are up to something. So, but all the relevant agencies and people, sister services, they were informed that this will going to happen. And the moment that we have TOT, we call TOT, time over target. That means the time over which the weapon will hit the target. Moment the TOT confirmation came that yeah, it has been released and it has hit the target, our work started actually middle of the night, and we started ringing up everyone at different levels and informing all the relevant agencies that this has happened, and now put your guard up. So now we were fully with the guard up, and a whole lot of activity started
Right.
thereafter. So it was a beginning for us.
And of course, the next day they mounted a counter strike, and then Abhinandan shot down that F-16. So, what was going on in your in the vice chief's office in air headquarters at that time, and what were some of the feelings at that time that you were experiencing?
Yeah, so as you said, everything was on guard, and the situation started developing, and we started seeing the things happening, and aircraft was scrambled, and there is actually so many aircraft in the air, then becomes a fog of war actually comes in. Because yeah, and then messages start coming in. Okay, weapon dropped here, weapon dropped there, weapon dropped here, but they haven't crossed the line because they didn't cross the line. It was just for indicate that we have done something face saving, and the whole situation changed when the engagement took place. So the information was coming slowly, piecemeal, and slowly the picture was becoming clearer and clearer. So in the fog of war, when so many aircraft are milling around, so many aircraft are there, it happens, and that is what happened. But by the time situation got cleared by afternoon, evening, that we came to know that we had losses, and they also had losses. Plus, we did make some mistakes. Maybe we could have done fared better. And after that, subsequent action started, and immediate worry was to get our pilot back. And when we started seeing him on social media, we were assured that at least he is safe, he is alive, safe, and he will stay that way, because once they have shown on social media, I can't do much. So it was a relief when he came back. And thereafter, we kept our guard up till the time the whole situation got, died down and resolved. And very detailed analysis was done of the whole activity, and a lot of lessons we learned, and those corrective actions were implemented
Right, right.
subsequently.
Great. So that offers me a segue into my next question, and it's something that you also spoke about earlier, which is the Air Force is a technical force, and staying technologically at the cutting edge is very critical for the effectiveness of an Air Force. And so we have now, because of the Ukraine conflict, there's pressure from the Americans not to buy from the Russians. And, so we've depended on some of these imported platforms. We've now inducted the Rafale. But at the same time, we've also developed our own indigenous platform, the Tejas, which has taken time, but is something that we know intimately because we built it ourselves. We can make the changes we require. So, you chose to use the Mirage to hit those targets, but at the same time, Abhinandan was flying an upgraded version of a very old platform, something that you've also flown. So how should we think about technology, the speed with which if you buy something off the shelf from abroad, you get something which benefits from their R&D, but at the same time, if you don't build it yourself, you never build that capability yourself, and you're always dependent on imports. So I just love to hear how we should think about this conundrum of imported versus indigenous, fast versus slow, but more, in our control.
Yeah. So, Gana, you brought in a lot of things in this
Sorry.
question, actually. No issue. I mean, each one of them is worth spending at least maybe 15 to 20 minutes, but I'll be brief. So, first thing you started with, we use Mirages and MiG 21. Well, if the Rafale was there, the story would have been different on both the days. With the Rafale coming in, the weapons kind of stand-off capability and precision and the high altitude flying capability it has, the story would have been different. We wouldn't have had to cross even the boundary to hit our weapons. From far away we could have dropped air-to-ground weapons. Similarly, in the 27th, we would have had an edge over them as far as air-to-air missiles are concerned. They use American missiles, that is AMRAAM. And if we had Rafale and we had Meteor missile, then we would have been at an advantage. Okay. Having said that, now the main question comes up is, the Ukraine war you brought out. It's a lesson which is coming out of Ukraine war also. The correct thing you analyze push-pull of whether to join the Western camp or the Eastern camp. If we are self-reliant, this problem won't come. The tightrope walk situation won't be there. Number two, you brought out very correctly that unless you have your own defense industry and you're self-sufficient in that matter, firstly, you will be spending a lot of money on the purchase of this high technology equipment and platforms, weapons. Number two, they will not give you the latest technology. They will always keep the latest with themselves, and you'll get always second run technology. Number three, you are dependent and you don't know in time of need whether the tap will remain open or it can be closed. We have had these problems earlier also, especially with the US equipment in the previous, we had sanctions twice on us. Okay. Number four, next is if you buy from outside, you have a lot of restrictions on the usage, on integration of other weapons. Whereas if you develop your own technology, you can integrate whatever you want to integrate, your own weapons, you have the source codes, you have much more freedom to utilize that equipment system platform the way you want to do it. So it is very important that you become Atmanirbhar or self-sufficient, self-reliant, whatever you want to call it. So what we have been doing is, we're following the leapfrog method. And, you decide, key, I'm going to build up this technology, this platform by so and so year. And when you reach that year, that system should be ready and it should be at par with where the world has reached. That's how it should work. But unfortunately, due to various reasons, it's not been working. Like somebody lightly said, if leapfrog doesn't work, then situation comes and you have to do pole vault. Anyway, that is in the lighter vein. But initially, the Tejas project, which was started in 1983, was quite slow. And by now, we have two squadrons inducted, and we have contract for 83 more Mark 1A. And in future, the plan is to make Mark 2 and AMCA, which is the future projects. And I've flown both Tejas also and Rafale also. I was lucky before retirement I could fly in these two machines. Both machines are good. And Tejas project was initiated to basically replacement of MiG-21s at that time. However, the whole situation got delayed. There were teething problems. But now with the government taking a lot of action and a lot of impetus has been given, and the speed has increased and it has hastened up the whole project. The time frame which they are indicating for the future for the Mark II and the AMCA, if they can meet it, nothing like it. I mean, they are very optimistic, but if they meet it, it will be very good. And even we are trying to export the Tejas.
Yes,
You
of
heard about
course,
Malaysia
Malaysia,
contract and other
Philippines.
countries
Mm.
recently in the media. Yeah, other countries, 5, 6 other countries, looking around for a cut, which we have also made a bid for it. So that is Tejas project. Okay.
So sorry, sir. Can I ask you there? There are still some critical gaps. Like, for example, the engine we're still dependent on the Americans, and so you know there is a community within the service, I think, that is a little skeptical of DRDO's promises timing wise. What do we need to do to improve the predictability of that development process? Because I think that's quite key to making sure the platforms of the capability that we need by the date that we need it. And what do you think we need
Yeah.
to do?
I've also I've written about this also and spoken about this also earlier in my blog. And you're very right. The veterans are a bit uh, chary about the whole project and the timelines which have been propagated. But anyway, that is past. As I said, there were a lot of teething issues, a lot of problems. But now we are moving faster than before. Okay. Engine you brought out, Kaveri engine project has not taken off, and what I gather is that the program at the moment is Kaveri issued. But what DRDO is promising is that at the moment we're using American engine FE 404, and later on we'll be using more powerful engine of F 414. And what they're promising is that AMCA Mark II will have an indigenous engine. Now, how will they do it and when will they do it? I'm not very sure about. I only hope and pray that it does come through, because engine without engine, you're stuck. As you rightly said, you're dependent once again on someone. And engine is one of the major out of five challenges of building a airborne platform. Engine is one of the main ones. And engine technology basically is very, very few people, if you see in the world, and they don't want to part with it. They don't want to part with it, obviously. So you have to, even China defense industry is very, very advanced. They have made their own engine WS series, but they're also still struggling with the whole thing. So we'll have to struggle, but we'll have to put in a lot of effort to make it this thing. As far as indigenous content is concerned, different figures are floating around 50%, 60%. But what they're promising is that slowly, slowly we will increase the percentage of indigenous this thing. Like if you take a airborne platform like Tejas, there are five challenges. One is the airframe and the performance that it affects the performance. Second is your avionics and add-ons. Third is your controls and control laws. And fourth is the radar system, which is very good, which has to be very good and advanced. And fifth is the engine. May not be in this sequence importance wise. If you see Tejas, airframe, fine, we have designed, and whatever shortcoming, it will evolve over the period of time. The second part is the radar control laws, which is another success story. We have made a unstable aircraft and fly worthy because of the very good control laws. As far as radar is concerned, once again they're saying that uh, Mark II is some figure they're given. I think for 18th aircraft or something will have a indigenous radar, which is being called Uttam ISA radar. At the moment, it is Israeli radar. So that promise they made that it will have a indigenous radar. Okay, Kaveri we have already talked about. Next is the percentage of equipment. I think 114 out of 300 plus systems which are still either indigenous or from abroad. So the percentage is, you can say 50% or so. Different figures are floating around. So we need to increase this indigenous content in the long run. That is the bottom line.
Now, can I just probe a little more here? So, the private sector involvement people have been talking about, but also the problem has been that if the numbers are very small, then the private sector feels like it's too small an order. So I'm just wondering whether mixed use, so civilian plus military applications of certain things, whether that will create a large enough market. And we've had, almost no civilian development. I know the Saras was something we were working on, but then after that stopped. And now, all we've done is a little bit of an upgrade to the Dornier platform. But do you think that might offer opportunity to create more volume that then makes it interesting for the private sector? Because I know we have companies like Tata's making various sub-assemblies for global manufacturers, so it's not like the capability isn't there. How should we think about that?
Yeah, you're very right. Actually, there are three things in this. One is the involvement of private sector. Second is, the ecosystem. What do we do with the ecosystem? And third is the government endeavors. So I'll just touch upon these shortly. I mean, in brief. So one is the private sector. You rightly brought out. So far we have been involved with the defense industry as well as defense R&D. So there is an ecosystem. So ecosystem, what does it contain? It contains basically four verticals. One is the user. User you can call out defense, what do you call it? Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, or paramilitary, whatever security establishments I will call it. And second is your uh, what do you call it? Academia. Academia consists of all the uh, uh, IITs and think tanks who research what sort of technologies are there, what sort of technologies can be brought into the defense services, and what can be used in defense or in civil. So that is all academic work. So that is second vertical. And third is your R&D vertical. So whether it is defense R&D or private R&D. So that is important because you have to research and develop that systems. And fourth is of course production. So either you have DPSUs and private sector. So far private sector involvement has been low in the this thing. Now the ecosystem as a whole should work together as a team with focus and with accountability. Okay, that is what we need to do. Government has put in a lot of effort now in the last at least 5 6 years. A lot of things have taken place. The ease of doing business has increased. The technology infusion is taking place of transfer of technology being asked for. Then the list they produced, which that we will use only indigenous and will not import. Earlier they called it negative list. Now they're calling it no import list. And then fund allocation and carry forward. Plus privatization of some of the DPSUs like factory ordnance factory boards and things like that. Uh, Private sector they're trying to encourage. They're making these aviation or defense corridors and parks in various states to encourage small industry, MCMEs, they call it, medium and small industries, enterprises. So they're encouraging those. So all these efforts, if you take a mind, they will show result. They put a target that so much of export we should do. So a lot of effort has been taking place. So we need to do that. I mean, support these measures, and hopefully they will yield result. Now coming to your this thing, very true. The private industry is reluctant to come in because of two reasons. One is your uh, ease of doing business, which I covered. If it is too restrictive, then they will be put off. And second is the market. You have to have a market. Private industry works very, corporate works that way. First is the market survey. If you have market, then only you'll sink in money for R&D, for production lines and other things. Now, various ways of doing it is one is, you give them a assured market within domestic, and second is open up to world competition. Okay, or open up to the world, export. Now, if you open up to the world, that's a different challenge altogether. Challenge in the sense you have to have that quality, you have to have that working ethos which is at par with the major arms exporters. You have to have the quality, quantity, work ethos, as well as reliability, sustainability, all these aspects holistically look into it. It's not that one time you sold it and your work is over. The person who's buying that equipment platform should be able to use it. Otherwise, you lose face. Just if you are trying to sell, pointless that machine going there and then they're not able to fly it or it is say unsafe. Then it becomes a problem. So you have to see it holistically, all these aspects. So, in my opinion, the ecosystem, like you have ecosystem of small countries like Sweden, Brazil, hardly any threat perception of their own, but hardly any resources, but they are exporting because the ecosystem works very well. So that is where we need to concentrate. And I'm very optimistic in all my approach. So I feel that whatever actions we are doing, hopefully they will yield results and we'll do better in this. And where the situation will not come that we have to pole vault.
Right, right.
Before you eventuate. Just need 7B, like your import type southeast, connect for eventuate and deal selected.
So, sir, can I, you know, ask you to, shift your focus from this to just, long term? We're seeing a lot of very interesting developments now. For example, the loyal wingman. We're seeing the use of armed drones. We're seeing, long distance cruise missiles with amazing accuracy. So, just love to hear your thoughts on, the future of air war. and how technology is transforming some of those things. I know you came up in an era of starting flying with an HT2, in a Dalda aircraft. But at the end of your career, you're seeing all these developments. And so, how should we think of the future of air war in the next 20, 30, 40 years?
So that's another very interesting question, Gana. But before I take on this question, I forgot to cover one very relevant aspect, very relevant the previous conversation which you're having. If you allow me, I'll just cover that and then I'll come to this. See, in this whole gambit of leapfrogging or supporting Atmanirbharta, you have to remember one thing, that while supporting Atmanirbharta or self-reliance, you don't let your guard down. And what I'm getting at is there is a minimum deterrence capability which is required at all the times. Otherwise you'll become vulnerable. So that minimum deterrence capability depends on what sort of threats do you have, what is the capability of your enemies, and what is the attitude of the enemies. So based on that, you need to have a minimum level of deterrence. Now, you can say very nice, simply that I will not export, I will not get things from outside, but you cannot let your capability go down. So that minimum has to be maintained. If you can't produce it yourself, then you have to go outside and buy it. And while maintaining that minimum credibility, now you support Atmanirbharta and hope that your timelines meet this thing. So that is very important to understand. Okay, coming back to this technology, which is another very this thing. So, what is happening in the warfare as general and air warfare specifically? The changes which are taking place are at a very rapid rate because of the technology induction. Okay, and as I said, Air Force is a very technology intensive service, and it's not very old, 120 odd years, from the time first flight took place, and where we reached where within 6 to 7 years, a new service was on Air Force. The kind of potential you can see, and from simple air where people used to see visually dropped grenades by hand and fire pistols at each other, where have we reached? You can see the platforms now. They're jam-packed with the avionics and computing powers and smart weapons and smart skins and smart radars and whatnot. I mean, where have we reached? And the pace is not slowing down. We are going further and further. We're already talking about fifth generation is inducted, sixth generation is coming out, seventh generation is already in thought process. People are talking about 10th generation, by the way, some of them. So, yeah. So, very interesting. You covered few of the systems and all. Now, aviation at large and in Indian Air Force, at least in my service career, I've seen three major upgrades. I think we were very lucky in our various stages we have seen. So we have seen that stage where there should be simple aircraft and air combat, like Top Gun, you've seen Top Gun movie. So that kind of air combat visual within a bubble of say 3 kilometers maximum, 2 to 3 kilometers, firing guns at each other, very small range missiles, radars, working individually, not network. That sort of era. Two major upgrades started in 1980s, I think. A lot of induction took place, and we went into slightly higher technologically Air Force, where, for example, combat became larger. We have missiles which are long distance. I remember 21st Con, as a senior flying officer, had introduced new tactics of close combat missile. And then I went to FIS, and 3 years later, when I came back to Fighters Con, that CCM had gone on changed to A4M missiles, all aspect missiles. Combat envelope had opened up to 6 to 8 kilometers. And by the time I reached my middle supervisor level ranks and all, it had become BVR
Wow.
missile. And by the time I retired, it was fully networked, very advanced systems and advanced platforms with air-to-air refueling, VAX, and advanced platforms. And also, I've seen three major changes in the Air Force itself. And what is happening now in the future? Now, let's get on to the future. There are a few technologies which are really changing the warfare. One is quantum. Okay, and secondly, quantum along with space-based internet. That means you have a very high capability of uh, computing or data handling, and you have very fast availability of data in large quality. So if you combine these two, this is changing the warfare totally, and air warfare specifically. And now, if you combine three technologies in one, that is artificial intelligence, robotics, and nanotechnology. Why I've coupled these three together is, if you notice, all three robotics is getting towards unmanned platforms. Nano, in layman's languages, say miniaturization, which is ideal for air platforms. You need something which can compute very big, very high quality volume and speed, but it should be as small possible. And it should be machine learning, that is AI enabled. So, ideal situation, if you have these, you can make smaller machines and you can have bigger machines with a lot of computing power, which is ideal for aviation. The next is hypersonics, hypersonic weapons. And now the space is actually, the air warfare is going into higher space. Earlier it was restricted to say whatever 15, 20 kilometers. Now it has gone into space domain, which is a new, you can say, newer domain. And space is being weaponized whether you like it or not. So hypersonics is the weapons which are used, the space medium of travel, and then they're maneuverable also. And that changes the gambit, because if the projectile is coming at you 5 times the speed of sound, you need to pick it up much further. You need to have weapons which can intercept it much further. The whole gambit of warfare changes. So as a result, what is happening is swarms, drones. So this loyal wingman concept, I call it mother goose concept, is one of the concepts which is coming up in future, where you will have a benefit of both. Manned flight has got certain benefits, decision making and things like that. Whereas unmanned flight has got another benefits where the human body restrictions are not there in the aviation. A lot of debate goes on. People say the pilot will be redundant in future and all. Not at the moment, but what it is heading towards is that it's a combination of manned and unmanned. That is what is loyal wingman concept is. Secondly, what is major thing which is happening is unmanned platforms in all domains, whether it is land, sea, subsea, that is underground, underwater, deep sea, or in the air. Unmanned platforms are coming up in a big way. And in the air, the swarm technology is coming up in a big way, where the miniaturized platforms will all work in unison towards a common mission or a target. And they will get a one from various places, and then together they will go and do whatever mission is. So these are the basic changes which are taking place. As far as S400 and all, it's a system with multiple umbrellas. So in aviation industry, what is happening is, now you need sensors which are not only sensing in one domain, not only heat or noise or radar or visual. You need multi-sensor systems. With the miniaturization coming in, drones coming in with low signature, low radar signature, low visual signature, no noise signature. You need system which can detect them, and there'll be multi-sensor. So if you have a multi-sensor system, you will need artificial intelligence to collate, collect, and process that data, and gives you some sort of a reliable output or input, whatever it is. And these systems should be able to help you in decision making, decision support also. So AI is coming in a big way into aviation as well as military. This thing. So these are three or four things where we are heading for. Multi sensors, AI based systems. Networking is another important thing which has already happened. The Indian Air Force also has got three networks: air to ground, and ground network, all three working together. And not only that, now you need to network with other services and other ministries also, because the whole of government approach is required. So these are the various things where we are heading towards in future.
Now, can I ask you a follow-on question to that? The kind of talent that is required to make sense some of this is the sort of talent that you wouldn't traditionally associate with people in uniform, to put it politely. How does the Air Force find the technical skills or competence to make sense of this and plan for that future?
I'll come to your question, but when you're asking me this question, something tickled my brain. I've been talking to a lot of colleges also recently, and I find these youngsters, the type of questions they ask and the awareness level is so high. I feel that in our time we used to be very, very, blinkered or closeted view we had. These days, the youngsters are very, very aware. Why I brought in this is the youngsters who are joining the services at various ranks and this thing are very, very aware. First of all, technologically, they are very, very savvy. So for them to adapt to these new technologies and new systems, and it's much easier than the older generation who are not
The
yet.
digital
So
natives
that is
are
one of the
coming in.
important factors. Yeah, very true, very true. Okay, that's what I'm getting at. So now coming to manpower is very, very important part of the whole war fighting. Like I remember one of the discussions in one of the think tanks I was participating as a panelist was about the HR policies and HR related issues. Not only HR. When I say HR, it should is HR. Your training also is included in this. Your tactics, strategy, all those things included. Those factors, they are very, very important in warfare. So if you compare with China, that is one area at the moment we are ahead of it. Our motivation level, our experience level for fighting, our tactics, our common, all those training, we are we are slightly ahead of them at the moment. That is a good feature, and we should continue staying ahead. Now we have to adapt and change with the times. So what I'm trying to get at is that gone are the days when you wanted only say air warrior or a soldier or a sailor to do every sort of thing. Now you need to go into specialization, and that specialization you have to train him. Number one. Secondly, uh, uh, not only train, and secondly you have to look into your HR policies. You can't keep earlier keep moving a person every 2 years, 3 years. You need continuity. We need to change with the times. Maybe if required, keep him in a place for 5 to 7 years or whatever is required. Then we need to hire people who are experts. Like I remember when I was a group captain, I think in the air headquarters. No, I was a commodore, and I was looking after the EW electronic warfare part. And one of the presentations I'd given, and I said that very soon time is coming where we'll need cyber warriors. Cyber warriors may not be physically fit and 6 feet and muscular and able to do a lot of things, or but they may be a different variety, but they may be doing a job which is much more important than anything else, or they are specialized in that. For them, you will have to have a maybe different HR policy for them. So we have to have an open mind, and time is coming very fast when we need to go in for specialization. We need to go in for different rules as far as possible of their HR policies and things like that. We have to have an open mind on all these
Absolutely,
things. That's what I'm trying.
absolutely. Wonderful. Sir, I've taken almost an hour of your time. I want to thank you for your service. I want to thank you also for spending time sharing your views on these topics with the audience of the Blue Skies. Really very grateful.
Yeah, thank you, Gana. And I also enjoyed myself talking to you, and a lot of things I think we could have gone on for hours, maybe next time. And as a parting shot, I'd like to tell you one thing. If I get a chance, if I get a time machine and go back in time, or if I get a rebirth and get a chance to choose my life, I will again go back to reliving these 40 years, which has the Air Force. And not only 40 years, I'll say 44 years, including the training
Right,
time. And not only Air Force. I would like to be in the Indian
right.
Air Force.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Gana. Thanks a lot.
Visual to shoot before you visualize. Just need 70, like your report type southeast, you can edge for come midway and you'll select it.
Well, folks, that's all we have time for this week. Join us again next week. In the meantime, sign up for updates at blueskiespodcast.com. There you'll find links to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also write to us with your comments, questions, suggestions, and feedback from the website or to blueskies@prganapati.com. Subscribe to the podcast on any podcasting platform such as Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and even on YouTube. If you like what you heard, share it with your friends, give us a rating in your favorite podcasting app, and write us a review. It will help other people find us. I want to give my thanks to Saurav Chordia for our logo and Prithvik for the music. I want to reiterate that all the views expressed here are personal and this podcast has not been approved by or reviewed by the Air Force, Ministry of Defense, or any branch of the government. In the meantime, stay safe and Jai Hind.